In this video, we're going to dig into understanding VPNs and TOR. I'll explain how these two tools are very important for your privacy. It's actually a base starting point. I'm going to do this in a Q&A format. I'll start with the most basic question first and then get into the more advanced concepts as we go along. Apparently my viewership has now broadened and not everyone is a techie, so we'll take baby steps at first. But for the more advanced viewer, there will be interesting things for you. Questions like VPN plus TOR or TOR plus VPN or neither. There will be things that the more techie user will not know. So stay tuned. I'm on the platform Odyssey.com, and last I looked, I am now the top tech guy on there. Just for insurance, in case I get deplatformed, please follow me there using the link in the description. I have a VPN service, BytzVPN, and I also have a BraxRouter, which is a VPN and TOR routing device. This video is not intended to promote my products, but of course I made them because we privacy-minded folks need them. If you're interested in them, you can find them in the store on my app, BraxMe. The link is in the description. VPN and TOR, what are these tools for? Before we get deep into this, the first question is why are we even talking about tools like VPN, a virtual private network, and TOR, the onion router? In very basic terms, these two tools hide your IP address. That's all it does. Some of you may expect something that it doesn't do and have the wrong expectations, but it's really simple. Everything you do on the internet is passed back and forth with your internet home address if you're home. You may have a roaming address if you're not home as well, like if you're on cell data. It basically makes sure that when you ship any data over the internet, that each shipment of data has a source and destination. And there are devices in between called routers that redirect data based on these addresses. So it's no different than shipping any package over USPS, UPS, or FedEx. Same thing. You're not allowed to ship something without a destination address. If you do not have a return address or source address, then you may never get a response. On your home internet, this address is typically fixed by your DSL provider. Although they can change your IP address, in reality, my IP address has not changed in 18 years. In the last decade or so, companies have begun to collect data related to IP addresses beyond just knowing the general location. All IP addresses are reserved in groups, and typically these are grouped into published locations like a city. Most people think this is all that is known about an IP address. This is completely false. An IP address is an index to all the data on the internet because it is tied to a specific identity. One of the publicly available databases on IP addresses is the reverse IP lookup database. This is a location database that you subscribe to with location database companies like Skyhook Wireless and many others. The way this was collected was that your phones and computers emit a location using something called Wi-Fi triangulation. This is often sent to third parties when you log into websites or apps. If you don't block this, then a third-party website or app like a Yelp or weather service will then sell that location in GPS coordinates together with your IP address. This forms the basis of a reverse IP lookup. So once you show up in this database, if your IP address is seen, then someone can do this lookup and find out who you are exactly and where you are. This is not generally known by the public, but those in the business of tracking like banks and doxers make use of this information to make sure you're legit or to dox you. Additionally, the IP address is used to index your other social media information to match your data profile with your actual identity. I talked about the dangers of this in the Big Tech Dangers video. So, this information is a critical index and is tracked by everyone, including three-letter agencies, the big tech, mega FT, and just about every website. You want to hide this. Trust me. A VPN and TOR are two separate tools that hide your IP address. Important point, a VPN and TOR do not hide your location. Wi-Fi triangulation is not connected to an IP address. It is a separate capability of your browser and phone, but they can be collected together. Anyone using your internet like a visitor with their location on will likely at some point send the data location of your IP address, and it will end up in these reverse IP lookup databases. This is a very important point about visitors, and we will revisit that later. Understand this clearly. Once that data leaks, your IP address will reveal your exact location within 6 feet, even if you turn location off in the future. Now that you understand how important it is to hide your IP address, let's now talk about the tools to protect it. The first tool is a VPN. What is a VPN? A VPN, or Virtual Private Network, is a very specific function. A VPN works by setting up an intermediate computer server between you and the rest of the internet. When it's set up properly, the VPN will create an encrypted tunnel between you, your local device, and your VPN server. Then the VPN server will act as you and send your traffic out on the internet. When there's a response to your message, the data returns to the VPN server and then back to your local computer through the encrypted channel. So basically, the VPN is your PO box. The outside world sees your internet PO box. They don't know your home address or your name, only what is in the PO box. This is a very basic explanation. Now, there are two parts to a VPN that are unique. First, your public IP address is always the IP address of the VPN server. You can have many VPN servers. A VPN company will offer you a selection, and they all have changing IP addresses, which is basically like having multiple PO boxes. However, the IP address is fixed while you are connected to a particular server. Also, a VPN is always encrypted between your local device and the VPN server. So if you're using a VPN at Starbucks, a hacker cannot see what you're doing. Your ISP cannot see what you're doing. Your data comes out of the VPN and becomes visible again and appears like you. When you're using a commercial VPN, your data is aggregated among all the users of that VPN server. At any given time, there could be hundreds of you on a server, or thousands over a longer period. And so it would be impossible for a big tech to associate the activity with a particular user. And this makes that data ineffective. It also prevents a location company from using that data, since one IP address will have thousands of locations and it will be useless. Now, one important thing to understand about a VPN is that it is a SOCKS 5 protocol. Now, what does this techie term mean? It means that all your internet traffic is routed through the VPN. All. There are many things you do on your computer that uses different protocols. Browsing uses HTTP, email uses SMTP, there's DNS, there's WebRTC, and basically 64,000 potential doorways called ports. A VPN protects all of it. You may hear of an alternative to a VPN called a proxy server. You do not want this. This is not encrypted and not SOCKS 5, and it caches your data, so it is a potential honeypot. Free VPNs are usually just proxy servers, so don't use anything free. They make money from your data. Now let's talk about the alternative to a VPN. What is a Tor browser? Tor is the Onion Router, TOR, and the name of the project is torproject.org. And the most well-known part of the project is the Tor browser. A Tor browser is basically a security layer code over Firefox. So the basic browser is Firefox. Then the Tor project puts their code over it. This security layer then gives the browser access to the Tor relay, which is the network resources offered by Tor. The Tor project is made up of volunteers who code the open source of Tor, and then there are many more volunteers who supply Tor servers for free to the world. Yes, Tor was originally invented for the US Navy, but ignore naysayers trying to make Tor appear bad. They are likely from three-letter agencies. They don't want you to use Tor, like the shills that will make comments in this video. There are approximately 6,000 Tor servers in the world, run by volunteers and volunteer organizations. I'm sure some of those are run by three-letter agencies as well, but don't let that bother you. When you go to torproject.org, you can download the TOR browser. By the way, don't do this. Three-letter agencies make a record of every IP address that downloads the TOR browser because they think you're going to be a bad guy. So make sure you have a VPN before you do this. Everything on TOR goes through the TOR relay. The TOR relay is like a VPN network on steroids. First, all the connections are always encrypted, so you never have to worry about that. Second, your traffic is routed to 3 random servers out of the 6,000, and this routing changes constantly. You don't stay on one route for too long. The end result is that your IP address is constantly changing every few minutes. Third, the way the protocol works, your data is wrapped in an encryption layer at each leg of the 3 servers. So by the time you get to the final server, called the exit node, your message will have 3 layers of encryption that has to be peeled off like layers of an onion. That's why it's called the onion router. Because of the way it is encrypted, the servers in between do not know where the message is coming from or where it is going. This makes it extremely hard to break. Today, it is still the most secure way of using the internet, and it is free. It has a couple of drawbacks. One is that it is very slow. Since there are only 6,000 servers, each server will limit the bandwidth to 10 megabits per user, so it's not a good thing for watching video. Second, TOR exit nodes are published, so everyone in the world knows you're using TOR. And many banks and websites treat you like a criminal when you're on TOR. They block you and they flood you with CAPTCHAs, even though most of the people using TOR are ordinary people concerned about privacy. The TOR network is still very secure. It is possible in some situations to trap bad guys who use it, but only a state player has the resources to do that with what is called a timing attack, and it requires a fixed identity to be tracked. If you're not a criminal, you definitely have nothing to worry about. Now, a TOR browser isn't a complete tool. For a more complete solution, you need a TOR router. What is a TOR router? One of the deficiencies of a TOR browser is that it only encrypts and protects browsing traffic, or HTTP. It doesn't protect your email, your DNS, your videos. In other words, a TOR browser is not a SOCKS 5 protocol. But there is a way to use TOR as a SOCKS 5 protocol, and that is to use a TOR router. TOR routing typically is done on an external device. Your internet activity is routed through the TOR relay instead of directly to the internet. Now, some operating systems emulate this external device by running 2 operating systems as virtual machines. The well-known one using this approach is Unix, which is a super secure Linux distro. Another Linux distro that takes this approach is Qubes. But TOR routing can also be placed on an external router device, which is my preferred method. The reason this is better is because all the devices can use the TOR router. It's not limited to Unix and Qubes users. So a regular Windows, Mac, iPhone, or Android user could use a network that's routed through TOR. I have a video on how I set up a VPN router, and it's the same instruction for a TOR router. Basically, TOR routing is just a mode of operation. You can run in VPN mode or TOR mode. TOR is slower but more secure, and TOR is free while a VPN is not free. So in my typical installation, a TOR router is just a Wi-Fi on my network. I connect to it and it goes through TOR. Again, it is a SOCKS 5 protocol, so all traffic, including email, will go through TOR. 100% of internet traffic will pass through it. If the connection is lost, it will kill the signal. Now, should you use a TOR router? Before you make that choice, let's talk about the other side of this coin, which is the VPN router. What is a VPN router? A VPN router puts the connection on the router rather than on your individual devices. This means that you don't need to set up devices to go on the VPN. All you do is connect to the VPN router and you're automatically connected through the VPN. You don't even have to tell anyone that they're on a VPN. This is extremely useful for guests using your Wi-Fi, since guests will likely leak your location data from their apps. They can be prevented from passing your IP address to those data collection companies. Your kids will not need to know they're on a VPN. There's no need to inspect each device to make sure the VPN connection is on. So if you have a family, the only way to enforce VPN use is to use a VPN router. So should you use a VPN router or a TOR router? In the case of my BraxRouter product, this choice is just a switch. For normal family use, a TOR connection will just aggravate family members because of the limited 10 megabits per second connection. But it's important to have this option when you feel like you're doing something particularly private, for example, doing cryptocurrencies, or if you're a journalist or you're researching sensitive topics that you know someone is tracking. In theory, you can set up a network at your house to have an open network, a VPN network, and a TOR network. 3 choices depending on the situation. That's my setup. It's more advanced, but the options are satisfying. Now let's go to some more specifics. Do you always need to use a VPN? At home, any activity that can potentially relate to browsing activity, email, location, DNS queries, all of which are basically the activity on phones and computers. These always need to use a VPN if possible. There are websites that may ban a VPN or ban them for certain functions. Some banks may ban them. Some ban them if the location doesn't match. So temporarily, you may need non-VPN access, so you always have that fallback. Maybe you give that network a different password that's not accessible to everyone. But generally speaking, you do not need a VPN if you're using cell data. Cell data IP addresses are not unique to you, so they don't identify you. Gaming is not something that needs a VPN. A VPN would slow down the latency of gaming with very little gain in privacy. It's not a machine chock full of personal information. TV devices, Roku, Apple TV, and so on are consuming data. They themselves have no sensors and are not sending personal data. So it's not necessary to put these on your VPN. Same with the use of Netflix. Waste of energy to VPN Netflix. But some use a VPN with Netflix to avoid geofencing. This is not a privacy issue, but a trick, and it's not guaranteed to work. Since they use a lot of bandwidth, they will run faster without a VPN. These, though, are not privacy targets at the moment. If you're on the road and want to use the VPN, it's normally because you don't want your carrier to know what you're doing. That is a good reason to have a VPN on the road. So you can install a VPN on your phone when you're on the road doing something private. On Android and on the Google phones we service, we pre-install Orbot, which is the official TOR on phones. There is no official TOR on iPhones. I do have a VPN product that allows iPhones to connect to TOR. Can you layer VPN TOR or TOR Browser for more security? There are various combinations you can use. You can be on a TOR router on your network, a TOR browser on your device, and a VPN software running on your device. Basically, layers and layers of encryption and routing. That combination I just gave you above routes you through 7 servers. Will that add to your security? Actually, doing these layers can be dangerous because if you don't understand the end result, you will end up maybe canceling TOR out and just getting a slow connection, but no more secure. You see, it depends on which one the innermost layer is of the connection. If you're using a TOR browser, that will be the innermost layer and will give you a TOR exit. You will come out as being on TOR. But remember, TOR browser is HTTP only. You can still leak DNS traffic at the same time. The next inner layer is the network software running on your device. If it's running a VPN, then the VPN is your exit. This means a VPN on a device will cancel your TOR router. So you just pass through 4 servers for no benefit. The TOR router is the outermost layer of your connection. Therefore, do not add any more layers to the router so the router will exit you on TOR. If your router is a VPN router, same thing. If you're running the Orbot app, which is TOR, on your Android, and you're going through a VPN router, the exit will be TOR since it is the inner layer. In order for it not to get confusing, I don't recommend any layering of these devices. For example, there is no point to using TOR to hide yourself from the VPN company. You are logged into the VPN server and there's a timestamp that you're logged in. Some people use a VPN to hide from Tor. The way Tor works, this is mostly unnecessary, but it can be done by using OpenVPN on the device and a Tor browser and nothing else. Are VPN companies safe? This is a very important question and really is hard to judge. In general, I can tell you this. All commercial VPN companies use the same software, which is OpenVPN. This is an open source protocol. In general, all VPNs are interchangeable. The software is identical. Some make the front end pretty, but they just revise the open standard one from OpenVPN. So don't be tricked by some VPN companies stating they are different and have more advanced security than some other. That's total BS. The difference with VPNs lie more in their policies and procedures to maintain your privacy. Do they keep logs? In general, the logs of a VPN are very limited, even if they are enabled. Mostly, it will show the IP address of the source and destination. You do not want to use a VPN company that has logs, and most companies will not keep logs because it's just a liability to the business. But you never know if a VPN company is a honeypot and is owned surreptitiously by some three-letter agency and is collecting data without telling anyone. It is possible. I don't want to name names, but some companies do concern me, especially the biggest ones. I use my own VPN extensively, so I definitely don't want those logs captured. I guarantee you that I have no logs, and I'm very happy to allow a spot check of our servers, and you can randomly examine contents to show you that there are no logs. Many VPN companies are very big and run low-margin operations. They operate basically as big marketing companies selling widgets, but calling them fancy widgets. You are one of potentially millions of users. I'm a small operation in comparison. I have a face and a name. You see me here, so I'm not some mysterious conglomerate from Eastern Europe or Switzerland. I think a smaller company is low risk. I'm not telling you to use my VPN. I'm just giving you a basis for deciding on a choice. Trust is very important. My main purpose with a VPN operation is to make sure that my BraxRouters are easily configured because they are already preset to work with my VPN, and it does automatic updating. It just keeps things very simple. Can I make my own VPN router? Some of you are more sophisticated and can configure a DD-WRT or pfSense router to be a VPN router. There's a company that actually does nothing but that, and their routers, of course, are much more expensive, like in the $700 range. These are fine. They will work just as well. It requires more technical expertise to set up since DD-WRT is complex. My stuff is very simple with very few choices. What I think is different from my routers is that I fully support going with wired routing instead of just Wi-Fi. And wired routing can occur without any Wi-Fi. In fact, the Wi-Fi will be turned off, so there will be no Wi-Fi emissions. And most of it is done by just plugging it in and using the browser interface to set the credentials. But to be honest, this is all the same. DD-WRT is Linux with some complex front end to configure it. I program my own front end to Linux as well. So what I do is equivalent to what DD-WRT or pfSense does. And then I added Tor routing to it. If you're an advanced user, it is up to you what to use. If you want to just get it going and do away with the complexity, then my solution is easier. In the end, networking is complex enough, even with my simplified approach. So it's not necessarily for everyone to do this. As I mentioned earlier, I do have a BytzVPN service. It has Pi-hole for ad blocking built in, Tor routing option, and servers worldwide. We have personalized service, and we only have one restriction on our network: no BitTorrent. That's the only rule. There are no traffic limits. So check it out, and it helps this channel. And don't forget that subscribe button. See you next time.